Welcome to Dead Games, the unabridged audiobook for the Afterworld Apocalypse prequel. I'm Apocalypse author Camille Picott. If you enjoy this content, please support me and my books by subscribing to this channel and hitting the notification bell so that you can be alerted when new audiobooks and new book-related content is posted. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the story.
Dead Games, Afterworld Apocalypse Prequel by Camille Picott, narrated by Molly Secours. Copyright 2022. Chapter 1. Survival. Gunn races down the darkened hall of the abandoned school, looking for a door with no windows in it. Why does it seem like every pre-plague door has a fucking window in it? Behind him comes the angry howl of plaguers. 2 of them are still alive. Fucking hell. He'd gotten careless. He'd wasted too much time salvaging. Instead of finding a place to hide for the night, he let himself get distracted picking through pre-plague hardback books in the school library for his collection. Those fucking books just might be the death of him. His headlamp cuts through the gloom of the campus, illuminating classroom doors. Most of them hang open on rusty hinges. The classrooms have been looted over the years. Very little remains. Even desks and other furniture have either been destroyed for firewood or disassembled for salvage. There is literally no place to hide. There, he skids to a stop, boots skidding against the old linoleum as a solid metal door comes into view. The pre-plague faceplate reads janitorial supplies. Jackpot. Gunn jumps inside, yanking the door closed behind him. He's careful to close it quietly so the plaguers won't hear. They're somewhere in the school, howling and snarling as they track him down. There's no lock on the inside of the closet. The door swings inward, which might be helpful if there was a shelf or something sturdy to put in front of it. But whatever shelving had been in here had long ago been salvaged. He settles for leaning with his back against the door, wedging his sturdy boots against the floor. You got yourself into this mess, you fucking idiot. If he had just done what his father wanted, he wouldn't be out here in the streets of Oakland fighting for his life. Are you ever going to learn? He waits, straining his ears, listening for the inevitable arrival of the plaguers. They are single-minded in their desire for fresh meat. They eat anything that moves, from dogs to raccoons to humans. In Oakland, their prey has become scarce over the years. Soft growls sound outside in the hall, very close now. They're here. Their footsteps make almost no sound on the linoleum, but their snarls and grunts give them away. Just walk past me and keep on going, he thinks. Nothing to see here, just an abandoned janitorial closet. He forces himself to slow his breathing. Plaguers don't have supernatural hearing. In fact, there's nothing supernatural about them. They're not stronger than humans and can be killed like any human. Their raging bloodlust is what gives them the advantage. That and their rapid turn after a bite. 95% of the people bitten by a plaguer, if they aren't immediately consumed down to the bone, turn within 5 minutes. This is how the plague spread and decimated the world in less than a month. He'd been just a kid when everything went to shit. He has vague memories of watching television cartoons and attending a Mom and Me music circle when things were normal. But they're fuzzy and ephemeral. His strongest childhood memories are of fear, of running for his life and hiding out with his mom and little sister while his dad mobilized his street gang to fight the infected. When he thinks about that time, he can still taste the fear like it was yesterday. The growling draws closer to the janitorial closet. Gunn tenses his muscles, pressing the heels of his boots against the floor. The door is a flimsy barrier against the plaguers if they figure out he's in here, but he'll take a flimsy barrier over no barrier at all. A sudden howl is the only warning he has. The plaguers fling themselves at the closet. The door vibrates in its frame. Gunn's broad back, the only thing keeping it in place. How did they find me? Sweat breaks out along his neck and head. The closet door shakes as the plaguers repeatedly throw themselves at it. How did the fuckers find me? He hadn't made a sound. He's certain of it. Plaguers don't have an enhanced sense of smell, so as ripe as he is after surviving for 3 days in the Oakland wilderness, it can't be that. That's when Gunn realized his rookie mistake. He forgot to turn off his headlamp. The plaguers had seen the light along the bottom door seam. Fuck. I am so fucked. He grinds his teeth together, bracing his arms against the walls on either side of him as the plaguers rage against the door. He doesn't have any firearms. They are a rare commodity these days. All the warlords hoard them the way dragons hoard gold in the pre-plague stories. And even though Gunn's father is a warlord, this punishment wouldn't be proper if he had an actual firearm. His father would consider that to be letting him off easy. Gunn doesn't have an array of other weapons, though. A brace of throwing knives hangs diagonally across his chest, but those won't do any good here. He's too close to get in a throw. The plaguers would be on him before the knife left his hands. A baseball bat hangs from his left hip. A wrench and a long knife hang from his right. He decides to use the knife. It works well in close quarters, and he doesn't need any momentum to use it like he does with the bat and wrench. Here goes nothing, he thinks. He could be dead in the next 30 seconds, or worse, a plaguer. But he just can't stand here all night hoping the plaguers will go away. That won't happen. And if he lets them carry on long enough, there's a likelihood they'll attract other plaguers. He wraps one hand around his knife, then repositions his body in preparation for opening the door. 3, 2, 1. Fuck me. Gunn yanks on the handle, wedging one foot against the door so it only opens 6 inches, just wide enough for the frantic plaguers to shove their heads inside. At least plaguers die like humans. They procreate like humans, too. Which is why Gunn finds himself facing 2 adolescent plaguers. There's a rising population of teenage monsters in Oakland, and all across America, if reports from other compounds are to be believed. The plaguers are filthy, their hair hanging in matted lumps around their faces. Their skin is covered with a lifetime of blood and filth. The smell is 10 times more putrid than any refuse pile. They snap their teeth and strain against the opening. One of them manages to get his arm inside. The hand latches onto the front of Gunn's leather jacket and pulls. Gunn resists on instinct, fighting the pull before he remembers he needs to get close enough to stab these 2 fuckers. At least his father hired the best mercs to train him over the years. If not for his training, Gunn would have been dead long ago. He leans forward, shoving his 12-inch knife into the face of the first plaguer. The blade punches through the cheekbone and slides up to the hilt. Sticky blood gushes out. The second plaguer goes ballistic as his companion dies. He doubles his efforts against the door, managing to knock it open a few more inches before Gunn recovers his balance and stops it. But the fucker has both his arms inside the opening now, and both hands have latched onto Gunn's jacket. Dirty nails tear at the leather. Motherfucker. Gunn slashes. The first swipe takes off a hand at the wrist. The plaguer falls back into the hall, screaming. He crouches against the wall, holding his stump against his chest. Gunn throws open the door and springs out. He descends on the plaguer without mercy. While it's confused and in pain, he strikes. His knife slices across its neck. A red line appears in the dirty flesh, which quickly widens into a stream of blood. Gurgling, the plaguer tips over sideways. He convulses and chokes, curled around his wrecked hand. Blood pumps out of both wounds. He'll be dead soon. Gunn doesn't waste any time. He retreats to the closet, kicking the other body out of the doorway. Slamming it shut, he throws his back against it and slides down to the floor. His harsh breathing fills the tight space. He turns off the headlamp and listens to the thrashing of the dying plaguer out in the hall. It's over in less than 60 seconds. Silence stretches. Gunn remains where he is, listening and straining his ears. Finally, exhausted, he falls asleep sitting up, his back still propped against the door. Chapter 2. Home. Gunn waits until almost 8 o'clock the next morning before finally opening the door of the janitorial closet. Plaguers always return to their nests at dawn. Their sensitivity to sunlight demands it. Left too long in the sun, they die of burns. But there are always a few that linger in the early morning shadows. Gunn is tired, hungry, and not in the mood to fight any more of the bastards, and so he stays hidden until full daylight. He cracks open the door, checking the hall. The sight of the 2 dead adolescent plaguers greets him. The school corridor looks like a scene out of a horror movie. Blood is everywhere. Half a dozen rats who had found their way to the dead bodies during the night flee at the sight of Gunn. They run through the blood and leave little red footprints down the hall. He considers following those footprints to get himself some breakfast. His stomach rumbles with hunger. Rat isn't the worst food in the world, but it's a lot of effort for only a tiny bit of meat. He'd rather spend his efforts on bigger game, like a raccoon or a cat. Fuck it. He just wants to go home, take a shower, and read one of the books he picked up yesterday. He'll suck it up and wait to eat. 90 minutes later, the 3-story wall of the Oakland compound rises before him. The wall encompasses all the downtown high-rises of pre-plague Oakland and continues west all the way to the Oakland port. The wall is built of shipping containers, conveniently snagged from the port during the plague riots. This wall and its creation is the reason William Anderson, his father, rose to power during the riots. He united the street gangs of Oakland and organized its construction, conveniently killing off all the competition and rival gangs while he was at it. He's been in power ever since. Mercs patrol the wall. They're armed with crossbows and throwing knives, preferred weapons of those on wall patrol. The Anderson mercs wear a mishmash of clothing, most of them in a combination of blue jeans and leather. The only semblance of a uniform among the troops is the pre-plague Oakland Raiders patches. Mercs most commonly wear them on hats and jackets. Anderson has several shipping containers full of Raider gear. When a merc is sworn in to serve Oakland, they get a Raiders patch. After 7 years of service, a merc receives a leather Oakland Raiders jacket. Gunn scowls up at the line of mercs on top of the wall. "Tell my father I'm home." His voice echoes off the metal containers. The click of a 2-way radio fills the morning silence. "This is Garcia from the main gate. Gunter Anderson has returned. Over. Confirm we have permission to open the gates. Over." Gunn sighs in annoyance and rolls his eyes. Fucking hell. At this rate, he won't be home until dinner time. His stomach rumbles in protest at the thought of this. Knowing it could be a while, he sits with his back against the container wall, reading through his new copy of Art of War. This is the book that almost got him killed, but it was worth it. He's been looking for a hard copy for several years. At least he has something to read while he's waiting, It's a sunny morning, a rarity here in Bay Area of Northern California. The warm light mingles with the crisp air that blows in off the ocean. It's a nice morning for reading, especially without a worry of plaguers. It takes almost an hour for the Mercs to get in touch with Anderson. Gunn reads the entire book and has just started rereading from the beginning when word finally arrives that he's allowed back home. The Oakland gate hums as it swings open on well-oiled hinges. The 2 gates are 10 feet across and made of reinforced steel. The Mercs stop the gates when there's a 3-foot opening. Gunn slings his backpack over one shoulder and stalks inside. His best friend, his only friend, besides his sister, waits inside for him. And thank fucking God he's on an electric motorcycle. Gunn was not looking forward to walking all the way back to Atlas, the family high-rise in the heart of downtown. Hey, dude. Nate is a few years older than Gunn with shaggy brown hair. Welcome home, I brought you a snack. He hands Gunn a metal canister of water and a small bag of salted walnuts. Thanks, bro. Gunn empties the entire bag of walnuts into his mouth and chases it down with half the water. The water was cold, Nate grimaces, before the assholes made you wait an hour. Gunn grunts and throws a leg over the bike behind Nate. Whatever. It's wet. Tastes better than the shit I had to drink in the wilderness. Dude, you smell rank. Fuck you. Glad you're back, bro. Your hair is growing back. Gunn runs a hand over the thin black stubble covering his head. He plans to shave it as soon as he has a chance. Not that he minds his natural afro, but a shaved head is a silent defiance to his dad's luxurious dreadlocks. It's been boring without you, Nate says. Anderson hasn't had anyone to yell at and started taking it out on the Mercs. They're glad you're back, too. I could tell they missed me, Gunn says sarcastically, what with their rush to open the gates. You're like a savior to them. No joke, bro. They'll be toasting your return. Whatever. Take me home. Home is Atlas, a 35-story luxury apartment high-rise built in the pre-plague. The Anderson family lives in the penthouse on the top floor. Most of the apartments on the lower floor stand empty. Son, William Anderson, warlord of Oakland, rises from behind his broad wooden desk as Gunn enters his study. A big black man who'd once run a street gang. Anderson is every bit as tall and broad as Gunn. I was thrilled when the Mercs radioed to tell me of your return. He breaks off frowning. I don't recall inviting the family dog to our family reunion. Gunn throws an apologetic look at Nate. His friend grimaces and backs out of the study, closing the door behind him. Gunn says, I wish you wouldn't call him that. Anderson says, it's an accurate description. Gunn says, he's a human being. Anderson says, he's a drifter from San Jose who had the fortune of saving the son of the Oakland warlord from a horde of plaguers. If you weren't so soft-hearted, he'd be on the streets where he belongs. Gunn says, he belongs with me. Anderson says, I told you he could have one of the apartments by the docks. Most would consider that a jackpot. Gunn says, Nate stays with me. Anderson says, why he prefers your closet to his own apartment is beyond me. Gunn's mouth tightens as he bites back a response. Nate lives in Gunn's expansive walk-in closet. After saving his life, Gunn had brought him back to Oakland and offered him half of his suite. But Nate had insisted on the closet. Fucking luxury, dude. Nate was fond of saying that in reference to his tiny room. Anderson's chest expands as he visibly reins in his temper. His long, gray-black dreadlocks hang almost to his waist. His skin is the color of ebony. Forcing a smile, Anderson spreads his arms wide as though he expects Gunn to run into them. I'm glad you made it home alive. No thanks to you, Gunn thinks. What sort of sick fuck throws his kid into the wilderness to survive the plaguers as a form of punishment? It's become William Anderson's preferred method over the years. Gunn really wants to drop into the closest chair, but he smells like death. Anderson will raise holy hell if he fucks up any of the expensive, pre-plague furniture in his place. "Did you run into any troubles with the plaguers?" Anderson asks. Gunn shrugs. "The usual. Is the adolescent population still on the rise?" Gunn flashes back to the 2 teenage plaguers who tried to kill him last night. "Yes." "Did you take enough water purification tablets with you, or should I call Dr. Christakos for medication?" Fucking asshole. The last time Anderson flung Gunn into the wilderness, he'd gotten some bad water. He'd had the shits for over a week, not to mention being in bed with a fever. Dr. Christakos had some fancy pre-plague name for it. Gunn just called it hell on a toilet. "I'm fine," Gunn says. "Glad to hear it. The mercs respect you, you know." Gunn snorts. "Pfft, right. Oh, they do. Someday you'll thank me for these little expeditions. There isn't one among them who doesn't shit himself at the thought of being alone in the wilderness with the plaguers for a few days. Every time you return alive, their respect for you grows. That will pay dividends when you take over the compound someday." Gunn doesn't say anything. His future rule of the Oakland compound is what gets him into so much fucking trouble with his dad. He and Anderson rarely see eye to eye on anything. Gunn half suspects Anderson hopes he'll die in the wilderness one day so he can leave the city to one of his favorite mercs. "I trust this lesson won't be necessary again," Anderson says. "Fuck you, Dad." Gunn shrugs, non-committal. Anderson presses. "Are you ready to do the right thing?" Here they are, right back where they started. This is the reason Gunn had been kicked out into the wilderness, because he refused to do the right thing. Anger builds in his stomach. He swallows it back. Arguing will get him nothing, and he sure as shit doesn't want to get thrown back out of the city tonight. "I will take a contingent of mercs and relocate the poor fucks who have illegally taken up residence in the abandoned apartment complex by the docks," Gunn says at last, fury boiling around every word. There are 4 tiers in the Afterworld social structure: warlords, mercs, brains, and grunts. Brains are the teachers and doctors. Grunts range from merchants to the homeless. "And why are you going to relocate those poor fucks?" Anderson asks. "Because you own everything within the compound walls. No one has squatter rights, not even to an empty, run-down, shitty building with a leaky roof and no electricity. It's always the theatrics with you, son. But you are correct. And why is it important to assert rule and regulation with consistency? Because if you give people an inch, they'll take a yard." "That's right, son. The only way to maintain order is to keep a vigilant watch on all forms of chaos. All forms of chaos must be stomped out with consistent force. It is the only way to maintain order in the afterworld. The luxury and safety enjoyed by residents of Oakland is because I maintain order." Luxury. That's a joke. The Andersons have luxury, sure, and all the mercs live well. But everyone else? Not even the doctors and teachers live as well as the mercs. "I expect you to have the task completed by the end of the day," Anderson says. "No more slips, son." Gunn turns on his heels and stalks from the study. Not sure who he hates more, Anderson for being a sadistic, power-hungry asshole, or himself for failing to stand up to his dad to do what's right. Chapter 3. Mediation. Gunn's compliance lasts almost 6 months. He keeps his head down. He does what's expected of him, even if he despises it. His private hatred and loathing of his father grows in him like cancer, until one day he snaps. It happens when Anderson puts him in charge of the weekly mediations. People of Oakland come to City Hall for help to settle various disputes and, in some cases, sentencing for crime. Anderson has a few flunkies who take care of this, but today he's decided Gunn needs a turn at the judge's table. Nate accompanies him. His company is the only thing that keeps Gunn sane most of the time. "You're looking at this all wrong," Nate says. "You should use this opportunity to get some pussy. You know how many petitioners would blow you for a favor or a light sentence?" "That's disgusting." "Yeah, but you're laughing." "I'm not laughing." "Yeah, you are." Okay, he was laughing, but only because Nate is a sick fucker and always knows the right thing to say when Gunn is in a bad mood. Gunn has done mediation a few times. It's boring and tedious as fuck. But it sure as shit beats kicking homeless grunts out of an abandoned building no one else wanted to live in. Or at least this is what he thinks until the first case is brought before him. It's a theft case. A barber was caught lifting a few apples from the marketplace. "Business has been slow," the barber says. "My kids were hungry. Please, sir, I'll pay the merchant back." Cases like this make Gunn feel gutted. There's plenty of food and salvage for everyone in Oakland. But Anderson makes it particularly difficult for anyone not a mercenary to get it. One of Anderson's flunkies would have cut the man's salvage credits for a week, possibly 2. And even though Gunn knows word of this is going to get back to Anderson, he doesn't give a shit. "You're going to pay the shopkeeper back," he says. "You will pay twice the price of the apples. You have 2 weeks to make the payment." The mercs on patrol in the courtroom exchange looks at this light sentencing. The barber practically falls over himself in gratitude. In the corner of his eye, Gunn sees Nate pantomiming a blowjob with his hand and tongue from where he lounges in a chair at the back of the courtroom. Gunn ignores them all as the next case is brought forward. It's even worse than the first. The second one is a rape case. A merc was caught forcing himself on a bartender in a pub. The woman he assaulted has a face that's mostly purple. Gunn listens to both sides, doing his best to keep his temper under control. He has zero patience for sexual assault, especially where the mercs are concerned. Anderson keeps a well-stocked Vex brothel for his mercs. It's a perk of the job. Anderson mercs can go into virtual experience and do whatever shit they want. The sex workers on the other end can don any avatar and enact any fantasy desired, including rape, if that's a guy's thing. Yet still, shit like this happens. Even though Gunn knows Anderson will have his balls for this, he delivers the sentence. "You are docked 1 month's salvage credits. They will be redistributed to the victim." The mercs on duty gape. The court flunky rushes out the door, no doubt to radio Anderson. It's not the sort of sentencing they're used to their fellows receiving. Docking of a day's wages, maybe. A written apology, maybe. But losing an entire month of salvage credits? Unheard of. As far as Gunn is concerned, the fucker is lucky Gunn didn't order his ass thrown out of Oakland. He isn't quite brave enough to push his luck that far with Anderson. There is one silver lining in all of this. Anderson will never overturn one of Gunn's rulings, even if it flies in the face of everything he believes. Anderson never admits to being wrong, especially publicly, which means he won't overturn Gunn's decision to help the victim. Gunn makes it through exactly 2 more cases because Anderson's flunky comes rushing in the courtroom. "Excuse me, sir, but your father has an urgent matter to discuss. You are required to return to Atlas immediately." "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Anderson demands. His dark complexion is ruddy with fury. The barber's kids were hungry. It's been proven a human being can survive over a month without food. You know this. Gunn stares stonily at his father, refusing to argue. What would be the point? He's in for it now. Anderson might drop him so far away from Oakland he might never make it back home. Anderson visibly wrestles with his rage. When he finally speaks, his words are clipped. Sentencing is not equal among the stratifications. You know this. It's bullshit. We should be giving that poor barber more credit so he can feed his family. There's plenty for everyone. That's not what I'm talking about. People will forget about that, but they will not forget what you did to that merc. That fucker was caught raping some poor woman. He shouldn't get off easy. He should be kicked out of Oakland. Anderson stalks around his desk. He used to tower over Gunn, but not anymore. Gunn has an extra inch on his dad, but that doesn't stop Anderson from getting in his face and driving a finger into his chest. The mercs keep us in power, Gunn. Everything we have, this apartment, our clothes, our food, it's all because we have the loyalty of the mercs. So as long as we take care of them, they will take care of us. Why do you refuse to see that? So, we should go easy on a rapist so we can have a warm bed to sleep in? Gunn shoots back. That's bullshit, Dad. And you know it. What's bullshit is your refusal to accept the power structure of the Afterworld. Anderson snarls. There is no place for pre-plague justice in the Afterworld. If we don't maintain order, Oakland will succumb to chaos. If we don't maintain constant vigilance, the wilderness and the plaguers will end up inside these walls. It's happened in other compounds. Oakland is only as safe as we make it. You think excusing rape maintains order? Gunn shoots back. You think it makes people feel safe? It maintains the force we need to protect Oakland from other warlords. It maintains the people we need to salvage and bring supplies back to the compound. It's a delicate ecosystem, but you refuse to see it. These last words are shouted in Gunn's face. Gunn braces himself for what comes next. No doubt he'll be sent out into the wilderness for at least a week, if not more. Maybe without weapons this time. Anderson did that once before when Gunn really pissed him off. Nate is already packing his go-bag in anticipation of the sentence. You are 21 years old, yet you act like a delinquent juvenile, Anderson snarls. You are a man who pretends to be an idealistic child. Since you persist in behaving like a child, I will treat you as such. Anderson marches back to his desk and flings a manila folder at Gunn. Papers fly out. Checking a snarl of rage, Gunn bends down to retrieve the sheets. What's this? He holds up a printed photo of an Asian teenage girl. Your next assignment. Her name is Sulan Ham. She's a 16-year-old resident in Frisco who loves to play in Vex. All the preliminary intel on her is in the folder. You are to become her friend. You want me to hang out with a teenager? If you want to act like a kid, you can go to the playground with the other kids. Anderson snaps. What do you want with a teenager from Frisco? When you prove yourself worthy of my confidence, I'll share. Until then, do as you're told. You will record all your sessions with her and send them directly to me. Make sure the Frisco cyberbots mistake you for someone from another compound. Don't make me regret not sending you back into the wilderness. Chapter 4. Recon. With a tablet in hand, Gunn returns to his suite. Nate looks up from the array of supplies he's gathered on the coffee table. Okay, dude, check this out. Nate holds up a toothbrush. I know it doesn't look like much, but you can actually use this as a weapon. It's perfect for stabbing the eye of a plaguer, at least until you're able to salvage some proper weapons. The best part? I don't think your dad will flag it as a weapon. Where are... He's not sending me into the wilderness, Gunn says. Nate blinks. What? He's not kicking me out of Oakland. At least, not yet. He's given me another assignment. Gunn flings the folder onto his desk in disgust. What is it? Nate picks up the folder, flipping through the papers inside. Apparently, I'm supposed to make friends with a teenage girl from Frisco. The thought of having to put up with a chatty teenager almost makes his head implode. He didn't even like teenage girls when he was a teenager. Nate's mouth falls open. Your punishment is to make friends with a teenage girl from Frisco? Yeah. A corner of Nate's mouth twitches with amusement. Gunn flips him off. Nate bursts out laughing. Oh, dude. Nate slumps into the desk chair, doubling over as laughter overtakes him. Dude, what if she wants to give you a virtual pedicure or some shit like that? I'm not pretending to be a girl, Gunn says. Why not? It's the best way to get to know her. Nate squeezes out the words between bouts of laughter. You really think I can pull off a teenage girl? Gunn glowers. Nate cocks his head. Good point. She'll see right through you. You're way too fucking grumpy. So, what's your angle? Don't know yet. Gunn flops onto his sofa. All joking aside, I'm glad you're here, Nate says. I was worried he was going to dump you somewhere extra shitty this time, like West Covina or somewhere like that. Gunn broods. He's going after an innocent teenage girl. Did he say why? No, of course not. Why would he confide in his own son? Nate ignores the sarcasm. Seriously, bro. What could he want from a teenage girl? I bet someone around her is important. Maybe one of her parents is high in Wang's inner circle or something like that. That doesn't change the fact that I have to exploit an innocent teenager. It's probably not that bad, bro. Come on. I'll help you look through the files. Side by side on the sofa, they delve in. Gunn reads every word, filing away tidbits of information. Sulan isn't overly interesting. Her life is that of any teen in the afterworld. She goes to school, her grades are fine, but far from impressive. She's lucky enough to be from a family with enough money to pay for Vex and, like many kids, spends an inordinate amount of time in virtual experience. Vex is one of the few technological pre-plague relics that's still around. It's a way for compounds to maintain communication, as well as recreation for those who can afford it. Her mother is a merc, and her father is a doctor, Gunn says. They were both from Sanctuary. Her mom was a merc there, and her dad was a research assistant. Think that's why my dad's interested in her? Sanctuary was the name adopted in the afterworld by the compound built on the bones of Stanford University. It was one of the few compounds not run and controlled by a warlord. The mercs were all volunteers, none of them working for salvage bounty like mercs in other compounds. Rumors said the scientists there had discovered a vaccine for the plague, but that it was lost when two competing warlords converged in an attempt to seize the vaccine for themselves. Those two warlords were from Oakland and Frisco, his father and Wang, the triad gangster who rose to power in San Francisco during the plague riots. Gunn thinks it's all urban legend. If there was a vaccine, it's never come to light. That's probably the reason, Nate says. It's a good way to spy on her parents without getting caught. Check this out. She likes gaming sites. Nate taps a sheet of paper. Her favorite is Dead Games. It's a site for people to fight plaguers and plain avatars. I've heard of that place. Gunn spent a fair amount of time screwing around in Vex when he was younger. But the gaming sites lost their pizzazz after his first sentencing in the wilderness. It's hard to be enthusiastic about killing plaguers in virtual experience after killing them in real life. Gaming with plain avatars is so boring, Nate says. Why would you want to be yourself in Vex when you could make yourself big and strong? Or at least hot. Though she's actually pretty hot in the real world. He holds up a sheet of paper with pictures of Sulan. Gunn pretends not to be impressed. She's a mark. He can't afford to get distracted, though in truth, he'd spent several minutes studying her pictures when Nate was in the bathroom. She's fucking gorgeous with her long black hair and light brown skin. Maybe she likes being herself, Gunn says. Maybe, but if she's going to fight plaguers, she might as well go to a site where she can be a little more, imposing. Her reason doesn't matter. You said Dead Games is where she spends most of her free time? Yep, almost every night after dinner. That's where I'll make first contact with her. I assume Frisco tracks all Vex users the way my dad does. It's common for warlords to keep tabs on who their people interact with in Vex. The constant intrigue between the warlords makes it necessary. I'll have to use one of my dummy avatars to throw them off my scent. I'll program it to make it look like you're a merc from Orange County Compound, Nate says. Despite living as a drifter for most of his life, Nate has a knack for programming. What Gunn hasn't been able to teach him, he's taught himself through trial and error. What sort of guy do you think she's into? We can tailor your avatar. I don't care about being her type. I just need to be her friend, not date her. Well, you can't look like yourself, bro. What if she's seen pictures or Vex footage of the real you? She might recognize you. I know, but we don't have to go overboard. Maybe just lighten my skin and make my nose a little more white guy. Big and pointy like mine? Nate points to his nose. Exactly. I'll get your avatar ready. When are you going to make your move? Tomorrow night. Chapter 5. Art of War. The next evening, Gunn enters Dead Games in one of his dummy avatars. It has enough layers and security to fool cybersecurity, even good real hackers, if any decide to take a closer look. It took 2 of his dad's hackers 6 months to finish the programming of the avatar. He's been saving it for a mission. It seems a waste to use it on a teenage girl, but fuck it. If Anderson is going to make him do this, he's going to do it right. When he makes contact with Sulan, no one in Frisco will know it's him. Nate pulled together an external facade that doesn't look too different from the real Gunn. He bleached his skin and altered the facial features enough to disguise him. But Gunn's overall size and stature are the same. He kept his head shaven, a physical trait Gunn clings to in silent defiance of his father's perfect dreadlocks. Pulling on his Vex headset, Gunn enters the swirling blue of the Vex browser. He doesn't bother with a voice shield, not caring if Nate overhears his conversation with Sulan. The external mic on the outside of the Vex set allows avatars to speak to one another like normal people. It's not like his conversation with Sulan will be that interesting. If it's anything like the conversations he had when he was a teen, it will probably put Nate to sleep. The whirling blue browser deposits him in the lobby of the Dead Games site. Avatars are stuffed inside. In Dead Games, the avatars all looked like regular people. But in other sites, it's not unusual to encounter outrageous avatars. The walls of the site rise 30 feet into the air. Leaderboards are posted all around. The names of various Dead Games courses illuminate parts of the wall. A player can compete in games such as Plaguers in New York, Plaguers in Chicago, and Plaguers on a cruise ship. There are 2 lights next to each game, a red and a green. Games with green lights are open for entrance. Games with red lights have already begun and require a waiting list to enter the next round. Names of players are listed beside each game so everyone can see who's entering. When Gunn materializes in the dead games, he's sized up by everyone in the immediate vicinity. He ignores them, scanning for Sulan. It takes him several minutes to find her. She's so petite, she's nearly swallowed up by the surrounding avatars. But yes, there she is, waiting to enter one of the Plaguer games. Most gamers are clumped together in groups. It's immediately clear that Sulan is not part of the in-crowd. Despite being a regular here, she stands alone, ignored by the other gamers. He can see why. The other gamers are built like him, big and strong. No doubt they have formed teams to help one another get through the various games and advance on the leaderboards. They look down their noses at people like Sulan. Nate was right. It's odd she picked a site like Dead Games where players opt to use plain avatars. Why wouldn't she have picked a site where she could amp up her avatar? Only one way to find out. The blue light above Sulan's head indicates she's currently waiting for a game called Plaguers in Frisco. The course is designed to look like the very city where she lives. That's as odd as her choosing to be here at all. Why wouldn't she pick Plaguers in London or Plaguers in Hawaii? Why wouldn't she want to go someplace new in her free time? Something isn't adding up. Gunn selects the same game. A blue light appears over his head. He stays a healthy distance from Sulan, close enough to observe but far enough away that she won't notice him studying her. The light next to Plaguers in Frisco goes from red to green. As soon as it does, he's pulled into the blue vortex of Vex. A half-second later, he finds himself in the virtual streets of Frisco. Coit Tower stands in front of him. The 295-foot tower is a pre-plague icon, built to beautify the city. From this vantage point, Golden Gate Bridge and East Bay Bridge, relics long ago destroyed in the Afterworld, stand intact in the distance, both visible from the Coit Tower parking lot. Plaguers boil out of the tower, streaming across the parking lot toward the clump of waiting gamers. A few of the gamers take off, putting distance between themselves and the danger. Most of the gamers, especially the bigger groups of players, square off to battle. They're armed with typical weapons found in the Afterworld: crowbars, heavy wrenches, baseball bats, and throwing knives. A few even have crossbows. Plaguers collide with gamers. Weapons swing, bloody hands swipe, and teeth snap. Where is Sulan? Gunn falls back to a green hedging, something rarely seen in the Afterworld, and scans the crowd for her. He spots her on the edge of the parking lot, crouched on top of a metal garbage can. Armed with a brace of throwing knives, she deploys them into a clutter of plaguers that storm toward her. Her aim is good, but there are too many monsters. She'll be dead in the next 30 seconds if he doesn't do something. It's the perfect opening. Gunn breaks into a run. Drawing his baseball bat, he comes at the plaguers from behind, whacking the first one hard across the back of the head. "Thanks." Sulan flashes him a smile from where she crouches atop the trash can. Her hair hangs over her shoulder in a single braid. Stray wisps around her face blowing in the game's auto-generated wind. Before Gunn can reply, she leaps off the trash can and runs out of the parking lot. Gunn sprints after her, following her down Telegraph Hill. It's a downhill road that loops around the hill where Coit Tower sits. They make it halfway down Telegraph before a knot of 4 plaguers bound down the hillside, coming straight for them. Sulan pivots on her heel, drawing 2 throwing knives as she waits for them to get close enough to hit. Gun skids to a stop by her side, drawing his machete. "Blade this time, huh?" she asked, never taking her eyes from the drooling plaguers. "I like variety," he replies. She laughs, a strange sound, with the snarling plaguers bearing down on them. It's a stark reminder they're in Vex. No one in the afterworld laughs or quips when faced with plaguers. Gun leaps forward to meet the first of the plaguers, slicing upward with his machete. He cuts straight through the abdomen of an adult male player. The monster slides to the ground with a moan, blood spilling everywhere. Gun goes for the next nearest plaguer, a female in her 30s. She's nearly on top of Sulan. Gun attacks from behind and swings for her neck, cutting off her head. The other two plaguers are also dead, felled by Sulan's throwing knives. "Shit, that was awesome," she exclaims, grinning at the sight of the plaguer head rolling near her foot. She wouldn't say that if they were in the afterworld. "We gotta get the fuck out of here, come on." Recognizing that he's actually getting into the game, he snags her by the sleeve and yanks her forward. That's all it takes to get her to follow him. They run to the bottom of Telegraph Hill and sprint down Lombard. Ahead of them are groups of gamers battling several swarms of plaguers. "Too many plaguers here," Sulan says. "Come on, I know a way around Lombard." She cuts right down a narrow street that runs along the back of brightly colored bungalows. "How do you know the city so well?" he asks. "Or do you just play this game a lot?" "I live in the real Frisco." "Honest." Gun checks that box in his head. She's not hiding anything. "I take it Frisco bungalows are a lot less colorful in the afterworld?" he asks as they hit the end of the street and take the next left. "No, they're colorful, in a peeling paint sort of way." They emerge onto Grant Avenue, another wide boulevard lined with cute pre-plague bungalows. They run another block before a dozen plaguers boil onto the street ahead of them. Oh, shit. Sulan plants her feet, reaching for her throwing knives. "Are you kidding? Don't stop here." Gun grabs her by the arm, pulling her toward the front steps of a pink bungalow. "Haven't you read The Art of War?" He doesn't even know why he mentions the book, except that it's been on his mind after rereading it yesterday. But he sounds like an ass. Sulan shocks him by saying, "I've read it 3 times, but it's a little hard to focus on it right now." What's the point in reading it 3 times if she isn't going to use the information? He almost says this, but checks himself at the last moment. He's supposed to be making a friend, not pissing her off. She runs up the steps with him. The plaguers howl and thunder toward them. As soon as Gun reaches the top of the porch with Sulan, he spins around and grabs his throwing knives. "Always take the high ground when you can." To illustrate his point, he releases 2 throwing knives. The first 2 plaguers to reach the porch steps fall to the ground, the hilt of the blades standing out from their chests. "This position also maximizes the natural advantage of our terrain," Gun says, for some reason unable to stop himself. "See, we're forcing them to come through a bottleneck." This next point is illustrated as the plaguers shove at one another in their frantic attempt to clamber over their fallen and reach the stairs. He takes down another 2. Sulan throws 2 knives of her own, letting out a triumphant whoop as she drops 2 plaguers. 3 monsters reach the middle steps. They hiss and howl, baring their bloody teeth as they come for them. "Damn, you're right," Sulan says. "I really need to get my brain in gear and start using the book when I'm here." "We can figure that out later. Right now, it's time to retreat." Gun turns and kicks at the door. It snaps off its hinges and flies backward. He shoves Sulan through ahead of him. "High ground," he barks, fully realizing that he's losing himself in the game more than he should. Sulan bounds for the stairs. Her legs might be short, but she's quick. As soon as she reaches the top, she grabs the edge of a bookshelf and drags it toward the opening. How's this for taking advantage of what the terrain has to offer? she asks. Good thinking. Gunn takes the other side of the bookshelf and shoves. It's full of books, and heavy, but they manage to shove it between the stair railings just as the first of the plaguers reach the top. The bookcase smashes into the foremost of them, crushing them under the weight. The few remaining plaguers howl in frustration as they try to claw their way over the obstruction. Sulan and Gunn race for the nearest bedroom. They burst inside and slam the door shut. In wordless agreement, they drag a dresser in front of the door. That should hold them long enough for us to get out, Gunn says. Let's try the window. Sulan beats him to it. She climbs onto the bed, flings it open, and kicks out the screen with her boot. Long drop down, she says, poking her head out. Hang first, then drop, Gunn says. That will eliminate at least, he estimates her height, 5 feet of space. Her frown is immediate and fierce. 5'2", asshole. 5'2", sorry. She laughs. The sound is infectious. He laughs, too. She's as fucking gorgeous as her pictures. I'm just fucking with you. She climbs onto the sill and lowers herself over the side. Let's get the fuck out of here. Just as she disappears from sight, the first plaguer collides with the closed door. The dresser shakes from impact. It won't hold long. He follows Sulan over the windowsill, hanging from his fingertips for the space of a breath before letting go. Just as he does, he hears the door in the bedroom break. The sound of the dresser crashing onto the hardwood floor is even louder than when they dumped the bookcase. Sulan crouches on the ground, waiting for him, a machete in one hand. As his boots hit the earth, she shouts, "Look out!" She swings the machete. A plaguer flies out of the open window, coming straight for them. And then another comes, and another, and another. Shit! Sulan swings with her machete while simultaneously trying to get out of the way. Gunn snatches his machete, swinging wildly as he tries to retreat. He's not fast enough. A plaguer lands on top of him, the impact throwing them both to the stubbly green grass growing in the backyard. Gunn tries to bring up his hands, but the plaguer goes for his collarbone. He bites down before Gunn can shove him aside. Chapter 6. Infiltrate. As soon as the teeth sink into his avatar, the whirling blue of Vex snatches him out of the game. A second later, he's deposited in the Dead Game's lobby. He chuckles to himself, unable to remember the last time he actually had fun doing anything. Sure, he got eaten, but Sulan made it fun. She materializes beside him a few seconds later, scowling. Motherfucker, she growls to herself. I almost got away, damn it. She notices Gunn standing beside her. Oh, hey, that was fun. My name is Short Stuff. I'm Baldy. He extends a hand, using the Vex alias he took when entering the Dead Games. She gives his hand a vigorous shake. Nice to meet you. I haven't seen you around here before. First time. Thought it would be fun to check out a place that games with plain avatars. Check that out, Sulan points to the scoreboard. I'm not last, she laughs, delight plain on her face. Are you usually the first one to die? Sulan shrugs. People with teammates are the ones who always make it to the end. Easier to survive plaguers when you have help. She gives him a bright smile. Speaking of which, it was fun playing with you. Maybe I'll see you around? Wait. He grabs her by the wrists as she turns to go. Are you in a hurry? We could play another game. She raises an eyebrow. You're new around here, so I'll be blunt. People in the Dead Games don't team up with people like me. She states this matter-of-factly, not with self-pity. Honestly, she doesn't seem to give a shit what anyone thinks about her being here, as evidenced by the Short Stuff alias. Take my advice and shop around. Find some big guys to team up with, Sulan says. You won't have any problem finding teammates. It's the best way to get on the leaderboard. Fuck that, Gunn says. I don't care about the leaderboard. Didn't you have fun playing with me today? He can't actually remember the last time he had a good time. Yeah, of course I had fun, she said. So, what's the problem? Her expression becomes contemplative as she realizes he's serious. If you're looking for someone to mess around with, you're barking up the wrong tree. I don't use touch. Shit. How did they go from playing a Vex game to her thinking he wants in her pants? Does she see it in his face? Gunn has only had a few girlfriends. Dating is overly complicated and dramatic thanks to the fact that he's a warlord's son. But anyone who saw his exes would know Sulan is a dead ringer for his type. He decides to show his cards. She seems like the type to appreciate honesty. Look, I'm not denying you're hot. Any guy can see that. But really, I'm just here to game. I just want to have fun. Killing plaguers, I mean, not with touch. Touch is a type of black tech used for sex. It allows the user to experience everything the avatar experiences. It's what his dad's mercs use when they go into the Anderson Vex brothel. She studies his face, hands on her hips. He stares back at her, patiently waiting for her to finish her assessment. He really isn't here to get in her pants. That's certainly not what Anderson meant when he told him to become her friend. I'm a merc in the real world, he says, playing the role of his fake avatar. I'm just here to blow off steam and have some fun. A real merc? Both of her eyes lift. How old are you? 21. You? 16. Have you killed real plaguers before? Yes. How many? I lost count. He's not bragging. He's never bothered counting. That's really cool, she says, admiration clear in her voice. Gunn tries to get a read on what exactly has impressed her. Cool that I'm a merc or cool that I've killed plaguers? Both, she says. I want to be a merc. Are you training to be a merc? He asks, even though he already knows the answer from his recon. No. Anger flashes briefly across her face. My parents won't let me, even though my mom is a merc. A fuller picture of her begins to assemble in his mind. Sulan is a brain, a teenager being groomed to work as a scientist, programmer, doctor, or something along those lines. There's a similar schooling program for kids in Oakland, too. But Sulan doesn't want to be a brain. She wants to be a merc. The pieces finally click together. Dead Games is her exact fantasy. She wants to be a merc and fight plaguers in Frisco. Since she can't do that in the real world, she does it in Vex. That's really shitty, Gunn says, knowing empathy is a surefire way to earn her trust. Your mom is a merc, but she doesn't want you to be one? Nope. She wants me to be a doctor like my dad. And she doesn't care what you want. Nope. Her anger grows with each word. The direction of the conversation is very close to ruining the easy air between them. Gunn gives the trajectory a nudge in a different direction. I know what it's like to have parents who don't give a shit about what you think, Gunn says. But fuck them, right? They can't control us all the time. What do you say to a game of Plaguers in London? I can teach you some stuff. Really? You'd really show me stuff? What did you think I was doing when I told you about the high ground? I didn't have time to think about it. That was good advice, by the way. And yes, I'd love to play another game with you. Several hours later, Gunn finally exits Vex. He and Sulan played 4 different games together. She'd been full of questions, asking everything she could think of when they were on the course. He takes off the Vex set, grinning despite himself as he tosses it onto the table. What are you smiling about? Gunn jumps in surprise. Nate stands in the doorway of his closet, one eyebrow raised in amusement. I got her. Gunn puts his business face back on. We're meeting again tomorrow night to game. Don't lie to me, motherfucker, Nate says. What really happened? Did you get laid on your first try? Wait, no. His eyes narrow as he studies Gunn in the dim light of the room. Oh, fuck. Do you like her? Damn it. It's impossible to hide anything from Nate. Let's just say tonight beats the shit out of mediation, he says, deflecting. Nate looks like he wants to say more, but thankfully he lets go. Frisco bots were all over you when you first started gaming with her. But it was just the standard spy bots, no real hackers. Your dummy avatar fooled them. Here, check this out. He angles the tablet so Gunn can see the screen. His face is gleeful. This is who they think you are. He swipes the screen, revealing a man with acne. The dude is so ugly that for a second, Gunn thinks he's looking at an avatar. Then he sees the look on Nate's face and knows it's a real guy. Frisco cyberbots think that's me? Gunn asks. Nate bursts out laughing. He laughs so hard he can't even speak. All he can manage is a wobbly nod. Whatever, Gunn growls. I don't care who the bots think I am. Just make sure you keep up the surveillance when I meet up with her tomorrow night. On it, bro, Nate says between wheezes of laughter.
If you're enjoying this story, be sure to check out Zombinist Invasion, my Cold War zombie apocalypse series. It combines the nostalgia you would find in a Cold War movie such as Red Dawn with the mayhem and horror of a classic zombie story. Available on Audible, Kindle Unlimited, and select audiobook retailers. And now, back to the show.
Chapter 7. Terms. Sulan and Gunn materialize in a rented Dead Games locker room. It's a plain 10 by 10 room with a wall of paint-chipped red lockers on one side. Now that was fun, Sulan laughs, delight clear in her voice. And we made the leaderboard. The Art of War stuff really works. Of course it works, when you remember to use it. Gunn teases, sitting down on a wooden bench in front of the lockers. Fuck you, Sulan says, good-naturedly. I'm a brain trying to live in a merc's world. We can do better than 20th place. I want to start using some of our techniques against other teams. Her eyes widen. You mean like strategize ways to get rid of them? Yep. If it works on plaguers, it can definitely work on humans. We'll out-strategize everyone. Based on the smile that splits her face, he can tell she likes the idea. Who would have thought I'd make a leaderboard in just a few weeks? Sulan exhales happily and plops onto the bench beside him, laying down on her back. The top of her head bumps against his leg. He wants to reach out and caress her hair, but doesn't dare. Gunn says, You're a fast learner. He ignores the desire to touch the braid that trails along next to his thigh. Being a quick study isn't always a good thing, she wrinkles her nose. I've always been good at math ever since I was a little kid. Now my parents pressure me about homework and testing, especially my mom. Nothing makes her happier than seeing me hunched over a math textbook. I know how you feel. My dad always pressures me to put our compound's needs ahead of my own. What do you do about it? Gunn stalls before answering. He doesn't like admitting he's a coward. But there are enough lies between him and Sulan. He doesn't want to add to the collection. Honestly, I usually follow orders, even if I don't agree with them. What sort of orders? Like clearing squatters out of an abandoned house because they don't pay rent. I mean, the house is an empty shithole with no electricity or running water, so who cares if people squat there? It's not like the building is being used for anything. Just let them have the fucking building, you know? The Orange County warlord sounds like a dick. He is. There are enough similarities between Anderson and the Orange County warlord that Sulan never questions his stories. And you said your dad is a high-ranking merc? Yeah. What happens if you don't follow orders? Punishment. What sort of punishment? Last time he sent me into the wilderness for 3 days by myself. Sulan bolts upright. Say that again? I was sent into the wilderness for 3 days by myself. Her mouth hangs open, Wang isn't a saint, but he sounds a hell of a lot better than your warlord. Her eyes run up and down his body in a quick scan. But you obviously survived. Yeah. You are a badass motherfucker, you know that? I'd be more badass if I could figure out a way to get those squatters a permanent shelter. Sulan cocks her head at him. There's more than one way to stay true to yourself. What do you mean? I once tried completely bombing my grades. That was after my second assessment when I turned 13, when I was officially confirmed for the brain tract at school. I was so pissed I purposely flunked all my tests for the next 2 weeks. I suppose I proved my point, but Mom lost it and grounded me from Vex. That's sort of like you defying orders and getting sent into the wilderness. Not that my life was ever at risk like yours was. My point is, I had to find more subtle ways to own myself. Now I make sure I maintain a 3.0 GPA, and let me tell you, for a Chinese family, that's practically failing. This explains her lack of good grades. She does it on purpose. My parents are appalled every time a new report card comes home, Sulan continues, but I remind them that I'm technically on the honor roll. They don't like that, but they don't take away my Vex set either. I never thought about things that way. The orders come and I obey them, until I get so pissed off that I can't take it anymore and I rebel. It's a cycle I can't seem to break. I get it. The empathy in her eyes makes him feel vulnerable. He's never talked to anyone like this before, not even Nate. Figure out a way to follow his orders on your own terms, she says. That's what I do. Like, I don't know, maybe use some of your salvage credits to rent a few rooms for the squatters. Or if you can't afford that, maybe buy some supplies with your credits and help them build a few shelters. She shrugs. I don't know the answer, but you get what I'm saying, right? He nods, his mind beginning to crank. Yeah, I see what you're saying. She smiles. Let me know what you come up with. I know most people would say I'm stupid for throwing my grades, but I like knowing every facet of my life can't be controlled, you know? It keeps me sane. Sulan reaches out and gives his hand a brief squeeze. He can't remember the last time anyone touched him with simple kindness. He squeezes back, wishing he had touch in his system so he could really feel her. You have a right to be happy too, Gun. Sulan retracts her hand, lacing her fingers together in her lap. To live life on your own terms as best you can. I don't think of my life in terms of happiness or unhappiness. It's just assignment after assignment, never-ending duty to family and compound. I mean, I have a comfortable life, more comfortable than most. It doesn't seem like I have a right to worry about being happy when I have plenty of food to eat. That's more than a lot of people have. Yeah, I know what you mean. Sometimes I feel fucking ungrateful. She shakes her head, looking at him through the loose strands of hair that fall in front of her eyes. How about one more training round before we call it quits? He can't help the return smile that pulls at the corner of his mouth. All right, let's go. Gun continues to meet with Sulan. They play as many as 4 or 5 games every night. It never gets old, but as each day passes, Gun is increasingly aware that it's because he likes being with Sulan. He could give 2 shits about the games themselves. He privately acknowledges that he's falling hard for her, though every time he thinks about it, he does his best to suppress the thought. Wanting a girl he can't ever have will get him nowhere. Sulan continues to eat up every piece of advice he shares on fighting and tactics. They get as high as 4th place on the leaderboard. They spend more and more time in their rented locker room, talking between games. Their conversation never slows. They talk about everything and nothing at all. She opens up more about her family. He hears all about her mom, who started out as a cage fighter when the world fell apart and eventually became a mercenary. He hears about her best friend Billy and her father, whom she clearly adores. Gunn reciprocates, carefully picking parts of his life to share. He tells her about Nate, the drifter who saved his life and came back to the compound and now lives as his roommate. He tells her about his sharp-tongued sister who can outdrink quite a few of the mercs. He shares as much truth as he dares, but it's not enough. Gunn wants to tell her everything about his crazy, egomaniacal father, about the stuff he's forced to do to preserve the social status Anderson has created, about his radical thoughts about a compound that isn't run like a medieval keep, but a place where a warlord actually prioritizes the welfare of his people. But he can't. If he fucks up, Anderson will take away this assignment. And Gunn wants this assignment to last as long as possible. So he dutifully records everything he does with Sulan, every conversation, every laugh, every Vex battle against plaguers, and then he sends it all to his father, as ordered. Chapter 8. Sparring. It isn't until Nate lands a solid kick to his gut, sending Gunn sprawling onto the training mat, that the answer comes to him. "I've got it," he says, holding up a hand to keep Nate from pouncing on him. He's sticky with sweat and stinging with bruises. His neck throbs from a chokehold. "Got what?" Nate frowns, rubbing at a bruise on his cheek that will be purple and swollen by tomorrow. "A way to help the homeless grunts my dad forced out of the abandoned building a few months ago." "I didn't realize that was something you were working on." "Dad has always wanted to expand our territory to Alameda Island," Gunn says. Alameda is a small island town separated from Oakland by a wide channel of water. It's one of the back burner projects. The town has been abandoned since the plague riots. Most of the plaguers there probably died from starvation. "Where are you going with this?" "You can't hold territory if you don't have people in it," Gunn says. "The buildings in Alameda are probably all shit after being abandoned for so long. I'll ask for volunteers among the grunts. Anyone who goes to help clean out the island can have a place to live. Dad gets Alameda, and the grunts, who need a place to live, get a roof over their heads. We can even hire some of them to maintain a 24-hour watch on the ocean. It's a perfect lookout place for pirates. It's a win-win for everyone." He rambles on, working out details in his own mind as he talks. "What do you think?" Gunn asks when he's finished. Nate opens and closes his mouth several times before speaking. "You're different," he says at last. "What are you talking about?" "You've been different since you started seeing Sulan every night." "It's a nice distraction from the shit Dad has me doing." Gunn shrugs, not wanting Nate to guess how much he likes her. "I forgot how fun it can be to game and Vex." Nate pokes Gunn in the neck, right in the sensitive spot from the chokehold. Gunn knocks his hand away with an annoyed grunt. "I can't remember the last time I got you in a chokehold." Nate pokes him once more for good measure. "You're distracted. She's distracting you." Gunn glowers at his friend. "Dad has me running 3 salvage missions a week. I got a lot on my mind, Nate." "Yeah, but that's normal stuff." Nate stands his ground, meeting Gunn's glower. "This stuff with Sulan, that's not normal. You usually wait until your anger builds to the point that it gets the better of you, then do something stupid that gets you in trouble. You've never found a creative workaround before. I'm finding a solution that benefits Dad and our people." "That's just what I'm talking about. You always take the straightest route, even if it's the most destructive." "I'm gonna take a shower." Gunn turns his back on his best friend. "How long before your dad notices the effect she's having on you?" Nate calls after him. "Tread carefully, dude." Gunn responds by slamming the training room door behind him. The worst part is that Nate is right. Sulan is a distraction. She's all he thinks about. She makes him want to be a different person, a better person. Chapter 9. Touch. Like he does every evening, Gunn heads down to Dead Games to meet Sulan. He shakes away the sense of self-loathing that often plagues him. He's a selfish bastard and he knows it. He hurts Sulan every time he sees her, even if she doesn't know it. The lies, the deception, the spying. He may have found a creative workaround for the homeless in Oakland, a proposition Anderson approved and Gunn is currently overseeing, but not for his assignment with Sulan. Gunn shoves his misgivings to the back of his mind. Game face, he tells himself. It's not his fault he likes Sulan. It's not his fault his father makes him spy on her. None of this is his fault. As he materializes in the Dead Games locker room they rent, he catches Sulan closing her hand over a small pouch. She shoves it into a cargo pocket. "What you got there?" he says, curious. "Nothing. How was your day?" She smiles at him. He loves that smile, but her obvious evasion has him frowning. "What are you hiding, short stuff?" "Nothing." "You put something in your pocket." "I told you, it's nothing." "If it's nothing, why won't you show it to me?" "Just drop it, Gunn." "Tell me what it is and I'll drop it." "Fine." She scowls, dipping her hand into her pocket and pulling out the small pouch. Wordlessly, she passes it to him, then folds her arms across her chest. He's come to know that challenging expression she gets. There's something in this bag she doesn't think he'll like, and she's ready to get in a fight about it. He opens the pouch, doing a double take when he sees the bright green powder inside. "This is touch," he says. "Yep." "What are you doing with touch?" After her declaration about never using the stuff, he's more than a little surprised to find her with it. "I haven't decided yet." Sulan takes the pouch back from him. "What do you mean, you haven't decided?" "It's not a riddle, Gunn. I mean, I haven't decided." "What's there to decide? There's only one thing you do with touch, Sulan." A thrum of anticipation goes through him. "So you say. I happen to have a much bigger imagination than you do." He's 100% certain his imagination is more than up to her challenge. In the real world, his dick starts to get hard. "I don't mean that kind of imagination, you sick pervert," she snaps. "Don't look at me like that. You're the one holding a bag of touch and talking about imagination." "Guys are all the same," she scoffs. "You realize I'm not leaving the locker room until you tell me what the fuck you're up to, right?" If she has a boyfriend, he might just lose his shit. Even though they are strictly in the friend zone, she knows he likes her. It's impossible to hide, though he'd been careful not to push things between them, mostly because he can only see it ending in disaster. But that does not mean he's going to take it well if she's with someone else. "Fucking hell." Sulan runs a hand through her hair. "This is not going the way I had planned." "What exactly were you planning?" She shoves him in the chest. "Can you stop thinking with your dick for 12 seconds? That's not fair. Now you're just being shitty." "You're right. I'm sorry. It's just, look, I feel stupid, okay?" He sits down on the locker room bench. "Just talk to me. We talk all the time." "I know, but this is different." She slumps onto the bench next to him, looking defeated. He waits. The look of misery on her face is almost enough to make him cave, but he forces himself to wait her out. She finally folds. "I have an idea about training." "What sort of training?" "Merc training." What does Merc training have to do with touch? Touch allows a person to experience the physical sensations of their avatar. I know it was developed for Vex brothels and dating and stuff, but do you think it could be used to train? You want to train with touch? Yes. Her gaze is unwavering. Yes, I want to train with touch. Do you think it's possible? Her words are like an unexpected left hook to the jaw. They leave him floundering and dumbfounded. You want to train like a merc in Vex using touch. He repeats the words just to make sure he isn't mistaken. Yes. I don't know. I mean, it's not like people jump all over their bedroom when they. He gestures out the air as if that can encompass all the sexual exploits a person can do with touch. I don't see how you can effectively train with touch, but you can die with touch. It happens every once in a while. Someone does something stupid while on touch and it gets them killed, like jumping off a building in Vex, thinking they can fly. Other drugs are usually involved, but that doesn't make touch any less lethal. He once saw an Anderson merc covered in bruises after a night in the Vex brothel. Everyone gave the guy shit for his taste, but that didn't stop him from indulging. I've got no one to train me in the real world, Sulan says. And you want me to teach you how to be a merc in Vex with touch. I want you to train me. Yes. If we train with touch, you could get seriously hurt. I know. You could die. I know. Then why do you want to do it? Because I want to own my life. Her words go through him like a spear. He feels them go all the way down to his core. It's exactly what he wants. A life he owns. A life free and clear of his father. If he could have that freedom with a little black tech, he'd have used it long ago. Touch was illegal in the pre-plague days for a reason, he says. If someone stabs you in here, the wound will appear on your real body. We'll be careful, she says. I'll only use it when we're alone together. We can use a private course and start small, like with 1 or 2 plaguers. I'm not sure anyone's ever used touch this way. How do you even know it will work? I don't, but I still want to try. The way I see it, it should work for building muscle memory. Like you said, I won't be leaping around my bedroom, but if we're sparring, I think it will train my reflexes. Do you have access to any exercise equipment? He asks. Yeah, my apartment building has a workout room. Why? Let's say we try this, and let's say it works. He can't believe he's even entertaining this crazy idea. Muscle memory is great, but you still need actual muscles. I could give you workouts to help build your strength and endurance. She perks up. Does this mean you'll help me? That depends. On what? What do you plan to do with your training? Last time I checked, brains don't get drafted for salvage missions. This is the piece he hasn't been able to fit in the puzzle. Just because she wants to be a merc doesn't mean she gets to be one, even if she trains. That's not how things work in the afterworld. Have you ever heard of the meat grinder? Sulan asks. Chapter 10. Meat grinder. Holy fuck, the meat grinder. Gunn gapes at Sulan. The fucking meat grinder. No, he says flatly. No, you haven't heard of the meat grinder, or no, you won't help me. Of course he knows what the meat grinder is. The annual competition just aired in Vex 2 weeks ago. No, I won't help you, he says. Not with this. An angry frown turns down the corners of her mouth. Why not? Because it's even more dangerous than training with touch. But, damn it, do you have a death wish? The meat grinder is a fucked up publicity stunt Wang uses to make money and weed out the extra mouths he feeds. He makes money off the backs of people who are poor and desperate. The meat grinder is an annual foot race from one end of Frisco to the other. Those who make it to the finish line get to join the ranks of mercenaries, which means a monthly credit pay increase and a salvage bounty. They seed the course with plaguers, Sulan. And you've been teaching me how to fight them. A Vex game is nothing like real life. I almost died the last time I was in the wilderness, and I was only facing 2 adolescent plaguers. 80% of the meat grinder contestants die every year. That's because the contestants are brains and grunts who don't have any training. It will be different if you train me. That's a dangerous assumption. Look, my mom goes into the wilderness several times a week to salvage. She's done it my whole life. It doesn't even frighten her, and she runs into plaguers on a semi-regular basis. Stumbling into a plaguer nest in the daylight during a salvage run isn't the same thing as being someplace at night that's been seeded with plaguers. That's suicide, Sulan. No, it's a chance to live the life I want. Look, I know you don't want to be a brain. No, you don't get it, she shouts. It's not the life I want, Gun. I've never wanted it. I've wanted to be a merc since I was a little kid. I don't want to spend my entire life in a research lab, or the hospital, or in a classroom. She glares at him. I thought you, of all people, would understand. If you had the chance to live the life you want, wouldn't you do anything you could to take it by the balls and claim it? I want you to be my life. The words almost come out of his mouth, but he chokes them back. Sulan, my plan will work, Sulan says. If you won't help me, I'll find someone who will. So you're going to ditch me if I refuse to help you. I'm not going to ditch you. We'll still be friends. Gun, there's no one else I'd rather have train me. Every night since we've met has been a type of training session. I learn more and more about strategy and how to use what's in the afterworld to keep myself alive. I've learned so much. I'm asking for more. You're asking me to stand by and watch you risk your life. You risk your life every time you challenge your dad and warlord. How long before you blow your top and defy him and end up back in the wilderness? How's that any different from what I want to do? Damn it. She's right. He does risk his life every time he defies his father. There's never a guarantee he'll make it back when he's sent into the wilderness. We both want to own our own lives, Sulan says. The afterworld hasn't left us a lot of options. We have to make the best of the ones we're given. I have almost a year to train. That's more than enough time to get ready. Fuck. He slams his open palm against a locker, then spins around to face her. I can't stand the thought of something happening to you. He stares at her, not caring that she can see every emotion etched into his face. As she meets his eye, he sees something. A flicker, a recognition. Is it possible she feels something for him too? Tell me the truth, she says. Do you think it's possible for me to make it through the meat grinder with your training? Damn it. He wants to lie. He wants to tell her there's no way in hell she could survive. But he's promised himself he will only lie when absolutely necessary. And over the few months they've been hanging out together, he's seen that she could be a good fighter if given the chance. Yes, he says. Yes, I think it's possible. I want to do this, she says. I need to do this. Will you help me, Gunn? He doesn't want to do it, but he can see from the look in her eyes that she's made up her mind. She's doing this with or without his help, and he sure as fuck doesn't trust anyone else to get her ready. Deep down, he understands why she wants to do this. He doesn't blame her for taking the opportunity. He would do the same if given the chance. He says, "Okay." Sulan says, "Okay? You mean you'll help me?" Gunn says, "Yes, but we have to get serious. No more fucking around in competitions. We train 7 days a week." Chapter 11. Curry. It's past 1 a.m. when Gunn finally says goodnight to Sulan. He tosses his Vex set onto his bed and goes straight to Nate's closet. It's empty. There are only a few places Nate would be at this time of night. His friend has his occasional bouts of insomnia. Gunn secretly thinks Nate has nightmares about shit that happened to him in the wilderness, though he's never asked him directly. But he hears Nate occasionally shouting and thrashing in his sleep. Gunn heads first to the family training room. The lights are off, the room deserted. Next stop is the kitchen. The Anderson family kitchen is a high-end affair, built with the best materials pre-plague money could buy. Stainless steel, Italian tile backsplash, and Chinese marble countertops. Gunn opens the door to find Nate standing over the stove, bending forward to sniff the fumes that waft up from his frying pan. "Hey, dude," Nate says upon seeing him. "Have fun with your girl tonight?" Gunn doesn't even know how to explain what happened tonight. "What are you cooking?" Gunn enters the kitchen, inhaling the delicious scent. "Vegetable curry. Needed an excuse to use that can of coconut milk you scored for me. Want some?" "Hell yeah, dude. You didn't think I'd pass on curry, did you?" Nate is a decent cook. Gunn gets him odd ingredients when he finds them. Things like curry and coconut milk are always high on Nate's list. "I was hoping that you'd spend the whole night with Sulan so I could eat it all myself." Nate grabs 2 bowls and fills them with the food. "This is your lucky night. I even made rice." He spoons that into the bowls from a second pot. "Remind me why I don't have you make dinner every night?" Gunn asks, digging into his bowl. Nate plops into a bar stool beside Gunn at the counter. "Because cooks are a dime a dozen? Your dad has 3 of them on call." Unfortunate fact, but true. "What are you doing here, bro? My cooking rocks, but we both know you didn't come here to eat. Everything go okay with Sulan?" "Things went fine." "Then why aren't you in your room jerking off?" "What the fuck, dude?" Gunn slams his fork down. "Do you always have to be such a fucking pervert?" "Dude, I was just kidding." Nate elbows him, giving him a look. "Are you finally working up the nerve to ask her out?" Gunn scowls. "No. They have been over this. He can't date Sulan. But there was a development." "Really?" Nate leans on one elbow, his attention fixed on Gunn. "What happened?" "She decided she's going to train with touch." Nate drops his fork. "She wants to do what?" Gunn gives him a recap of their conversation. "I finally get it," Nate says when he's done. Gunn says, "Get what?" Nate says, "I get why you like this girl. I couldn't really put my finger on it until now. She's as fucking crazy as you are." "So you think it's a bad idea?" Nate rolls his eyes. "Sure. Just like I think it's a bad idea every time you rile up your dad and get yourself thrown into the wilderness." It irritates Gunn that this is almost identical to Sulan's comments. "It's not the same thing," he snaps. The fuck it's not, Nate replies. Who packs your go bag every time the shit hits the fan? Who shows up at the city gate to pick your ass up when you finally drag yourself home? Sure, I think you're a dumb shit, but whatever. I've got your back, bro, no matter what. I hope you said yes. You think I should train her? I sure as fuck don't think you should let anyone else train her. Not if you want her to survive. Tell me you said yes. I said yes. Thank God. The last thing you want is some idiot to do a half-assed job training her. That will just get her killed. Nate levels a serious look at Gunn. You know you've got it bad for her, right? I know. Finally. I've been trying to get you to admit that for weeks. Gunn hunches his shoulders, shoveling food into his mouth. I'm not going to do anything about it. Why not? Because I'm a spy. I've been lying to her from the beginning. Nate says, So what? Gunn says, What do you mean, so what? Nate says, Just come clean with her. Gunn says, She'll hate me. Nate says, Maybe, for a week or so, but she'll get over it. Gunn says, That's not the sort of thing someone gets over. Nate says, Sure it is. Couples get over all sorts of shit. Just look at your parents. He's right. Anderson has had a few affairs. Margaret, Gunn's mom, always takes him back, though she makes his life hell during the makeup process. Sulan and I aren't like my parents. Of course not, bro, but you can't let things drag on. The longer you let it go, the worse it will be when you come clean. But my dad will find out. Fuck that, Nate says. You docked a merc an entire month's credit because you knew it was the right thing to do. You were willing to take it in the ass to do the right thing. Why aren't you willing to do the same thing for Sulan? Gunn doesn't have an answer for that. He spoons another helping of curry into his mouth, falling silent. Nate goes to the fridge and pulls out 2 beers. Anderson has a brewery in town. Know what your problem is? Nate pops the top off the beer and sets it in front of Gunn. No, but I have a feeling you're going to tell me. Nate points at Gunn with his beer bottle. You weren't afraid when you sentenced that merc. You didn't give a fuck what happened to you. But you like Sulan. Really like her. And you're afraid if you tell her the truth, you're going to lose her. You'd rather keep lying than tell her the truth and run the risk of losing her. The fucked up thing is that if you keep going, you really will lose her. Fuck you. Gunn grabs his beer bottle and storms out of the kitchen. I'll be here all night, Nate calls after him, and I can make more curry if you want. Seething, Gunn slams the door to his bedroom. Chapter 12. Brunch. Once a month, the Anderson family has brunch together. Nate is allowed to attend, though the family dog is forced to eat in the kitchen by himself. Nate doesn't care. All he cares about is the food, which he claims is better than his own cooking, but only because the Anderson cooks have access to better ingredients. Anderson makes it a point to attend brunch in silk pajamas, as if to prove this should be a relaxing event, which it isn't. His mother at least gets dressed, even if she only wears jeans and a t-shirt. Margaret Anderson manages to make a relaxed outfit look stylish. Her red hair is pulled up into a simple twist. His sister Maya always manages to look like she stepped off an apocalyptic runway. Today is no exception. She has the same caramel-colored skin as Gunn. She wears a black leather trench coat, black leather pants, and black boots with 6-inch heels. Maya, what's the status of your negotiations with Lake City? Anderson asks, dousing his waffles with syrup. Maya spoons fresh strawberries onto her plate pausing only to pass the bowl to Gunn. I've been on 3 virtual dates with the warlord's nephew. He threw in an extra 3 cases of bullets after last night. Turns out, I'm pretty memorable. Anderson throws back his head and roars with approval. Maya grins like a fox. Even Margaret smiles with viperish pride. That's my girl, Anderson says, giving Maya's shoulder a squeeze. I can always count on you to get the job done. When will the shipment leave? The train is scheduled to leave before the end of the month. The Lake City warlord in Missouri seized the pre-plague rail lines about a decade ago. He uses them to transport weapons from his manufacturing plant to compounds all over the country. Well done, Anderson says. Well done, Maya. Our munition supply is overdue for a restocking. Gunn, Margaret says, how is the reoccupation of Alameda going? We sectioned the island off into quadrants, Gunn says. It took a week, but we cleared every building. I lost 2 mercs in that operation, his father comments, spearing a waffle piece. And 5 grunts, Gunn replies coldly. Grunts are disposable, Anderson says. Mercs are not. It was a small price to pay to win back such a big piece of territory, Gunn replies. One of the grunts I found knows how to rehabilitate the docks. He's going to oversee the construction of a floating bridge between Oakland and Alameda. We won't be able to cross with vehicles, but there will be easy access between the 2 cities. The original bridge had been blown during the riots, like so many bridges in the area. They'd been using barges to get back and forth between Alameda and Oakland for the past few weeks during the operation. Very well done, Margaret says. Good thinking to use the grunts to help clear the island, Maya says. Gives them some skin in the game. You gave them housing on the west side of the island? Yeah, and I installed a few radios so they can let us know if they see any pirates. I suppose they all want a raise, Anderson says, since they're technically doing a service. What's wrong with that? Gunn says. A little raise in their monthly credits is good for everyone. They'll spend more in the market, not to mention they'll be grateful to our family for helping them. Anderson puts his fork down, mouth tightening. Don't get soft, son. This city needs you. If you're going to lead someday, you have to be strong. You have to be able to make the tough decisions and do what needs doing. Gunn tosses his fork on his plate. I just reclaimed a large piece of valuable territory for us. I'm not going to apologize for that. Nor should you, Margaret intercedes, resting a hand on her husband's arm. It was a job well done. She gives Anderson a tight look. I think Gunn has proven that he can think outside the box, William. His father grunts and resumes eating. How's the Frisco girl? Maya asks, voice a little too chipper. The look she shoots Gunn is a warning not to goad their father. Gunn puts on his game face. Typical teenager, obsessed with video games. Kinda like us when we were kids. My analysts have been reviewing the footage of your meetings with her, Anderson says. They tell me you meet with her every night. You told me to become her friend. Being her friend does not require you to see her every night. Gunn decides to bypass the conversation. Have you found the intel you need from her? Anderson rewards Gunn with his own game face. My analysts tell me she plans to enter the meat grinder. Yeah, she asked me to train her with touch. So I heard. She's what? Margaret puts down her glass of champagne. She wants to train for the meat grinder using touch. Gunn says this as nonchalantly as possible. I admire her creativity if that wasn't the most idiotic plan ever conceived. You don't think Gunn should help her, right? Maya asks. He needs to talk her out of this plan. Of course he should help her, Anderson says. Teenage girls are unpredictable. She'll probably do it anyway. How else can she survive the idiotic idea? I wouldn't trust anyone else with her training. Silence. Gunn, Maya, and Margaret all stare at Anderson in shock. His father has just complimented him. Dad, I've been seeing Sulan for months. What do you want with her? Gunn still hasn't worked that out. But if he wants Gunn to help her with this crazy plan, there must be a good reason for it. That son is, intel above your pay grade. Anderson pulls a half-used cigar out of his pocket and lights it. Gunn scowls, feeling the familiar rage gather in his chest. No one can get his hackles up as quickly as his dad. He stands up so fast he knocks his chair over. It doesn't make any sense. She's a Frisco brain. What could you possibly need with her? Anderson blows another smoke ring and says nothing. Gunn storms out of the room, a sensation of dread rising in his stomach. He might not know what Anderson has planned, but the level of interest does not bode well. He needs to protect Sulan. But how? Make sure you keep her alive, son, Anderson calls after him. I'm counting on you. Chapter 13. Truth. Gunn makes up his mind. He's going to tell Sulan everything. Every last gritty detail. It's the best way to derail Anderson's plans, whatever they are, and protect Sulan. She needs to know the Oakland warlord has taken a keen interest in her. At 9 o'clock, their agreed meeting time, he logs into Vex and materializes in their locker room. His nerves have him on edge, but he puts on his game face when he sees her. Hey, short stuff. She's already there, dressed in tight black pants and a tank top. Her hair is pulled back in a bun. Hey, Baldy. She grins at him, eyes bright. He's never seen her like this before. She's practically glowing. She's eager to train, he realizes. He inhales, fortifying himself for what he has to do. Sulan, I brought the touch, she says, so excited she plows right over him. Billy made a fresh batch for me. He said he made a few improvements to increase sensitivity levels. You told Billy what you're planning? Not like I could get out of telling him when I asked for touch, but I probably would have told him anyway. And he didn't try to talk you out of it? Of course he did, she shrugs, but he'd rather help me than let me get touch from a stranger in Vex. Sulan sure knows how to get what she wants. He takes another breath, trying to gather his courage to spill his guts to her. I know what I want to learn first, she says. What? I want to start throwing knives, she says. Knives are a good place to start, he says, trying to regain his footing. But I need to... It's a good way to take a plaguer down before they get close enough to bite, Sulan says. That's what you said to me once. And with knives, I don't have to waste time reloading like I do when I'm using a crossbow. Okay, we can start with knives. Do you have a place to practice at home where no one will see you? That will sharpen your skills. My mom has tons of throwing knives. She stockpiles them the way some people stockpile food. I can steal a few and find a place to practice after school with Billy. Here. Sulan holds out a bag filled with green touch powder. Do you need to use some in order to help me? He doesn't, but he nods and scoops out a small handful of the powder anyway. No way he's going to pass up a chance to feel her against him, even if it's only to throw knives. He sprinkles the powder on his face and head. The touch sinks into his avatar and disappears from sight. His body tingles as it takes effect. Sulan drops a handful of the powder on her head. I've never used this before. How do I know it's working? Gunn answers by taking her hand. For the first time, he feels the weight of it. Her fingers are elegant, her hands small in his. Fuck, she feels good. You'll know when it's working, he says, giving her hand a squeeze. 10 seconds pass. 20. Sulan gasps, eyes widening. Her fingers squeeze his, her lips parting in surprise. Before he realizes what he's doing, Gunn pulls her against him, wrapping both arms around her. Working? He asks, voice husky. Yeah. She rests her head on his chest. Yeah, it's working. All of Gunn's resolve shrivels up and disappears. Now is the perfect chance to tell her the truth. But there's no way in hell he'll do anything to break this perfect moment between them. He's keenly reminded of exactly what touch is for, and it's not knife throwing. We should find an empty training room. Sulan swallows and takes a step back. Okay. Training room 89 is open? Sulan says, scrolling through the tablet mounted on the wall near the door. Okay. Fuck. He is so fucked. How is he supposed to keep his hands off her with touch singing in his body? Forget telling her the truth. He can hardly form a coherent sentence. After training, he'll tell her after their training session. They arrive in the training room. It's long and narrow with training mats covering the floor. At the far end are 4 fake plaguers for target practice. An array of weapons lines the right wall. Everything from machetes to crowbars to knives. Sulan picks up a brace of throwing knives and hangs it across her chest. How do we start? The question kickstarts his brain. Training. Meat grinder. He's supposed to be helping her. Swallowing, he takes a second brace of throwing knives from the rack and hangs it across his chest. Let's stand 10 feet apart from the plaguer dummies, Gunn says, at last finding his voice. There are 3 basic types of knives. Blade heavy, handle heavy, and balanced. In a perfect world, every blade is balanced, but this is the afterworld. The only knife available might be some rusty thing you find in an abandoned kitchen. You need to be able to work with anything you find. We'll start with the balanced blade. Once you get the hang of that, we'll move on to the others. They spend the next hour working on her grip and stance. Gunn finds himself touching her more than he needs to. Thanks to the black text, sensation sings through his body every time they make contact. As he stands there, showing her how to position her wrist for a long-range throw, it happens. His hand moves all by itself. It slides from the hip he just positioned to her stomach, slipping under her shirt. His fingers splay across her belly. She lets out a soft sigh and leans her head back against his shoulder. Sulan. She abruptly turns in his arms and kisses him. Her knife drops to the training mat, forgotten. Both arms twine around his neck. Alarm bells go off in his head, but no matter how loud they ring, he can't stop himself. Can't stop kissing her. Can't stop touching her. She feels so fucking good. He can't get enough of her. He was supposed to tell her something. The truth. He was supposed to tell her about his dad. But the truth of how he feels about her drowns out the truth of why he met her in the first place. He barely remembers to shut off the recording before Sulan drags off his shirt. You have been listening to Dead Games, Afterworld Apocalypse Prequel by Camille Picott, narrated by Molly Secours. Copyright 2022. What happens next to Gun and Sulan? Be sure to download Dead Run, Book 1 of Afterworld Apocalypse on Audible.
If you'd like to check out more zombie audiobooks and ebooks for free, head over to my website, www.camillepicott.com, and sign up for the VIP Bunker. In the VIP Bunker, you'll find 3 free audiobooks and 4 free ebooks from my various zombie apocalypse series. You'll also find exclusive video content related to the books. Again, visit my website, www.camillepicott.com, and sign up for the VIP Bunker. And if you want to find out what happens next in this series, you can find the next book on Amazon, Kindle Unlimited, and select audiobook retailers. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you have a wonderful day.